How could anyone wear that, people might say today? These trends stunned people then and still surprised us now. Many of these trends seem strange or even shocking to us today, but back then, they were the epitome of style. Let's take a trip back to the 1970s, a decade of bold fashion choices, bright colors, and unconventional styles. Watch to the end and you'll see the really weird trends of the time. Corduroy suits. Remember the days when corduroy suits were at the height of fashion? In the 1970s, they were a symbol of style, and many considered them an essential part of their wardrobe. Corduroy was everywhere. People wore it to work, to restaurants, and even to social events. On TV and in movies, actors and hosts strutted around in these suits, giving corduroy the status of a real trend. While corduroy suits were popular back then, today they've almost disappeared from everyday fashion. People find them too heavy and impractical for modern life. However, in those days, they offered a sense of confidence and elegance, even though they weren't the most comfortable option. And that's just one example of how fashion changes over time. Let's look at another iconic trend. Ultra-short shorts for men. In the 1970s, men wore ultra-short shorts, and no one found it unusual. These shorts were popular not only on beaches and in parks, but also in sports. Basketball players, footballers, and even runners favored these short, form-fitting styles that showed off a lot of leg. At the time, they were considered both fashionable and practical for movement. Imagine someone wearing such shorts today. It would seem too revealing for most people. The ultra-short shorts of the 70s have disappeared from men's wardrobes, but they certainly left their mark on fashion history. What else stood out back then? Sequined clothing for everyday wear. In the 1970s, sequins weren't just for parties. People wore shiny, sparkling outfits as everyday attire, and it was considered stylish. You could find sequins on everything, from dresses to suits. These glittering garments caught the eye and added a festive vibe, even on ordinary days. This trend became especially popular thanks to stars like David Bowie and Elton John, who wore sequined outfits both on stage and off. It was a time when the more sparkle, the better. However, such bold fashion has long disappeared from the streets. Here's another way people expressed their brightness and individuality back then. Flared pants. In the 1970s, flared pants weren't just a fashion statement, they became a true symbol of style. The wider the flare, the cooler you looked. Everyone wore these pants, from school kids to adults, and the more they widened at the bottom, the better. They were so popular that you could spot flares everywhere, at schools, on the streets, and at parties. This trend captivated people and looked incredibly stylish at the time. The next trend will definitely surprise you. Long mustaches and sideburns. In the 1970s, long mustaches and sideburns weren't just part of a look. They were a true fashion statement. Men took pride in their well-groomed mustaches and thick sideburns, and the longer the better. This style was everywhere, on the streets, in movies, and on music stages. Actors and musicians like Burt Reynolds and Freddie Mercury made this look iconic, inspiring an entire generation to grow out their mustaches. In the 70s, mustaches and sideburns symbolized masculinity and freedom. What else was so iconic back then that surprises us today? Disco platform shoes. In the 1970s, platform shoes became a symbol of the disco era. Picture this: men and women dancing at glittering nightclubs, dressed in vibrant outfits, and tall shoes that added 5, sometimes even 10 centimeters to their height. The higher the platform, the trendier the person looked. These shoes became an iconic party accessory, and everyone wanted to add a little extra height to their style. Here's another fascinating trend from that time. Animal print clothing. In the 70s, animal print clothing was at the height of fashion, worn everywhere, from parties to offices. Imagine people showing up to work in zebra or leopard print shirts, and it was completely normal. These patterns weren't considered too bold, they were just part of the fashion scene. Clothes with leopard, tiger, or zebra prints were accessible to everyone and added a touch of exotic flair to everyday outfits. Did you ever own clothing like that? Rollers as a primary mode of transportation. In the 1970s, roller skates weren't just for fun. Many people used them as their main way of getting around. People skated through the city, commuting to work, meeting up with friends, and even shopping. It wasn't just practical, but also fashionable. Roller discos where people skated to the sounds of popular music were incredibly popular. Young people would gather there in the evenings to dance on wheels. Next up, you'll definitely remember this trend: wildly bright eyeshadow. In the 1970s, bright eyeshadow was an essential part of a fashionable look. Picture bold blues, greens, and purples covering the entire eyelid, catching everyone's attention at every disco. These daring colors were often paired with voluminous lashes and glossy lips, creating a truly vibrant and striking appearance. Many women felt like stars as they adorned their eyes with such makeup. Wide collars and ruffles on shirts. In the 1970s, wide collars and ruffles on shirts were at the peak of fashion. These shirts, often with bold patterns, were worn by men who wanted to stand out in a crowd and look stylish. These collars were so wide that they practically floated over the shoulders, while the ruffles added an extra touch of charm and elegance. It was a look that drew attention and showcased a fearless sense of style. Want to find out what else made people of that era so unique? Denim suits. In the 1970s, denim suits were incredibly popular. Denim went beyond simple jeans and jackets. People wore full denim outfits, including blazers and shirts, creating a cohesive look from head to toe. It was a style that worked for both everyday life and work, with denim clothing being considered not just comfortable, but also fashionable. The fashion of the 70s was truly unique, and many trends that were stylish back then now seem surprising. Which trend from that time stands out the most to you? Share your memories in the comments. We'd love to hear what evokes the strongest emotions from the past.